Yep, that is right. You probably guessed this was coming. Maybe not what I'm about to say, but at least this video, following up on my previous STARFIELD video. Yes, in this video, I want to tell you whether I was right or wrong in how I felt in that previous video. Whether I was right in not being too hyped for the game, or if Bethesda broke barriers and I should have been on the edge of my seat this whole time. Before that though, I just want to say a couple things. Now, if you want to skip to the meat, as always, I will throw that timestamp up on screen. Now, to the fine print. So first off, I'm actually writing this part of the script on the 30th of August, so I will not be able to say what I'm actually getting myself into later in this video. So with that, I want to talk about my current feelings, which remain the same as they were when I talked about STARFIELD previously. Let me explain some things first. Off the bat, from the trailers we've seen, I think the game looks absolutely great graphically. I think the gameplay and combat looks smooth and pretty well done. And I think that the concept of Fallout or Skyrim in space mixed with some other Bethesda and such aspects, I think that sounds absolutely awesome. Now with all that being said, as of now, I'm not really hyped for STARFIELD, which was the basis of that last video. But, even though I am not hyped per se, that does not mean I don't think the game looks good, and does not mean that I think that any part of it looks or sounds bad. I just mean I've not been very excited. Though I also said in that video that I would be playing it on release, and I would be getting a video out describing exactly what I thought, and if I was right or wrong. And that brings us here. And as I said, as of scripting and recording this part of the video, STARFIELD is still not out, and I still have no clue at this second what it's going to be like. But that is all about to change. Within the next couple of seconds, you will hear the excitement or even the disappointment in my voice. So without further ado, here is one of the biggest games of the decade, and what I think about STARFIELD. So I'm kind of at a loss for words here, to be honest. I had it all planned out, that if it was great, I would come into this part and scream with a woo, and if the opposite, I would come in with a solemn tone and break the news that I did not enjoy my time playing. But really, you might be able to tell that neither of those things happened, as I'm coming into this with kind of a confused voice. Let me get right to the point. I kind of just don't know what to think about the game. I mean, I have plenty of hours, so I've gotten a feel, but everything is so mixed for me that I'm like kind of right in the middle. And really, this throws everything off for how I originally planned this video. Let me just say here and now, I thought a lot about the game was awesome, and I loved experiencing it. Though there was also a lot that almost made me throw in the hat on playing. You know, I like to give a game a nice long while before making a consensus on what I think. STARFIELD took a little longer for me because within the first 5 hours of its release, I wanted to actually quit the game. But I persisted, and I'm honestly glad I did, because I do have a new opinion than those first 5 hours. But in all honesty, I am still just meh right now. So honestly, I think the best way to go about this is to just tell you what I liked and tell you what I disliked. Kind of like a pros and cons list. And honestly, I think we should just get away with the negativity first. So as I have a long list of things to talk about, let's just get right into the things that pushed me away from saying I was wrong. So right off the bat, I want to say, what is the freaking point in preloading? So I preloaded the game a good few days ago, downloading what I feel is a slightly outrageous 90 gigabytes. Then again, new age, bigger games. But when 5 rolled around on the 5th, I had my Ghost ready, food planned out, my PC ready to record some gameplay. Then I see that the game has to unpack 120 gigabytes of data. Like, what the heck, dude? Why preload it if I can't play it when it releases? Might as well just download it then. I do understand why they did it. It was to avoid people getting into the files and playing the game before release, even though few know how to do that even, and if it's still... And on top of that, it still happened. And on top of that, a bunch of different stores sold actual copies early. So really, what was the point there? But then, after realizing that I preloaded it on the slowest hard drive in my PC, it took 3 hours to unpack. So once 8 rolls around, I was finally ready to give it a try. I load the game up, and it was rough. And I mean really rough. The intro, the menu screen glitching out, audio cutting in, out, and I thought it was the shaders loading up and it would be fixed in a second. Then the shaders loaded, I got in the game, I was even more surprised to see how bad it was. Now, I will say real quick, this is not a slam piece on the game, as it was all fixable issues and slightly user error, but honestly, I want to vent about this really quick. So, once I loaded in, the game was an absolute blurry mess. So I go to see which graphics settings I can turn down. Well, the only settings are lighting and shadow settings, and a resolution scale. And that was sad to see. Next thing I noticed was it was set to all low settings. So I tried to change any, and boom, the frame rate is like 20 frames a second. So I had to change some things around. And honestly, I'm a frame rate over fidelity person, so I was okay with turning things low for the better frame rate. But whatever. I did it and it was a blurry mess. I tried to endure, but the game itself was broken. It was freezing, lagging, the audio would cut in and out, go out of sync. Honestly, it was utterly unplayable. So I thought about it and boom, the slow hard drive. All user error, I thought. I threw it onto the M.2 obviously and thought it would do much better. Now, I was not trying to fix the graphics, I'll say that as well. I have a mid-range PC and was not expecting much on that side. But the game was actually glitching out of control. Every couple seconds it would freeze, and as I said, the audio was just borked completely. So I throw it on the SSD and bada boom, the frame rate evens out, no freezing, no audio cut out. But the game is still so blurry, it looks like I'm running it at 480p. Though, after doing all that I thought would help, it was blurry but smooth frames or choppy and looking a little tiny bit nicer. But I noticed that with full resolution, it was still clay pretty much and the game looked awful. And I came to the conclusion that it was something I had to deal with. But after 2 hours of playing with it, I could not take it anymore. Fix it now or quit, I told myself. And I look into the settings one last time, it being 5 hours since the game released. I see indirect lighting, and I have not touched that yet because lighting usually destroys an already low frame rate. But with all options gone, I went for it, and lo and behold, the game looked beautiful, running at 60 frames in most places, maybe around 50 in some cities, and 80 to 100 frames everywhere else, and it still looked crisp. And this is when the game began for me, 2 hours into actually playing and 5 hours into the release. But honestly, it looked good, ran good enough, and the sound was fixed and it was sounding good. But that was my first con of the game. But now that that rant is over, onto the actual things I did not enjoy about the game that weren't user error. So other than the weird lighting setting causing such an issue, and going right into the beginning of the game, I will say now that I want to avoid any spoilers I can. I may name drop some places or people and you may see some stuff, but I will try to leave as much context out of this video as possible. But onto the cons. The beginning of the game, that first mission or tutorial whatever, was super duper boring to me. Like, I could not get into it. And that was another thing that I was thinking at first, I might not be able to do this. But once reaching New Atlantis and getting to go to Mars and the moon and, things pick up. And I will say, I was hooked in a little bit more. So, backtracking a little bit to the performance, there were also a couple of things that I did notice and did not really like that weren't user error. First of which being the way that the game performs, for what seems to be a very old engine. I mean, you can tell that this game was built off of the same engine that Fallout 4 and I'm pretty sure Skyrim runs in, just upgraded a little bit. But it is very noticeable when you go into workbenches, going into third person, not being able to see your legs. Let me just say, why no legs, Bethesda? It's been far long enough. I digress. I feel like with STARFIELD, they had an opportunity to at least make things feel a little different. but a lot of mechanics are all too similar to the things we've seen before. The next thing I felt was just impossible to look past was dumb AI and how dumb the AI, or at least the companions, are in this game. Like, I will be trying to get into a small room, then get blocked in, or the companions glitching out on a random object. I even saw one of my companions straight up jump off a 20-foot bridge. And one absolutely strange thing that happened, which I would assume was a bug, was my companion fell onto the ground, went ragdoll, they were still alive, they would still talk to me, and they were just laying on the ground. So I went on, did a dialogue scene, and they would chime in, still ragdoll on the ground. The dialogue scene would cut to them just laying limp on the ground talking. Like, what are you doing down there? But they really just feel like companions out of Fallout 4 and Skyrim, but maybe that was intentional as an homage. And on the topic of cons, I hate the whole dialogue camera in this game. And I hate the fact that I can't turn it off even more. It reminds me of Fallout 4's dialogue camera, which I hated as well, though in Fallout 4, you could turn it off. I haven't seen a setting to turn this off yet. I like it when it seems like you're the one having the conversation, not the game pulling the person talking to you right into your face, then jolting it from character to character. Like, it just feels super jarring to me and makes me want to skip through all the dialogue. I will get back to the dialogue though, because there are a few things that I did like. So, switching on to another side of things, I want to bring up some of the things about space and the planets in Starfield. I will start with the map, the hub of all planets you can find. I didn't like it one bit. I did not like the map one bit, like absolutely at all. And I mean the actual map, not the game's travelable world, but the Dora Explorer. It's the map. It's so big, so confusing. There's so much to see and learn, but at the same time so little. And then we get to the surface city maps. Holy hell, that was just something to trudge through and figure out. Ugh, bad map overall, and I think they could have definitely done better. Now, on the topic of the map, switching over to the planets, honestly, this is kind of on the pros and cons. So I'll just say that the planets you can travel to are very wish-wash. Some are very cool, like the fact you can go to Mars and the Moon and even a desolated Earth. But most of these planets, and the Moon not being a planet granted, are empty and barren and honestly kind of sad to look at. And the creatures I've seen on these worlds, though I will definitely see more, I bet, but what I've seen are all just very generic and what you would see in any movie or show. They just don't seem very unique. And getting anywhere on these huge planets is a pain, not only because of these creatures, but because everything is so far away. It really was just needlessly time wasting is what it felt like. Which leads me to my last con, which is kind of not a con, which is why it's going to be the last one, because it seems to sit right in the middle of this Vin Dieselgram. And that is the space travel. So I was really expecting something more like No Man's Sky, where you could fly from surface to space to planet to surface. This is not the case though. You get in your ship and you launch. Then you go through a loading screen and boom, you're in space. And there is pretty much no chance of you going anywhere in space unless you grav jump there, which is like hyperspeed or hyper jumping or whatever. And I just feel like there is a lot of loading, a lot of fast travel, a lot of reliance on the fast travel to get where you're going. And it would have been great to fly your ship around the planets, go near the surface and stuff, but hey, I'm just starting out, so who knows what I will find. And honestly, that's all the cons I got. So let me lead this right into the pros, starting with what I enjoyed about space travel. Really quick, before switching to pros, I want to apologize if you can hear a washing machine in the background. It's deciding to and it's really annoying. But getting right onto the pros, with the space travel, on the side of actually controlling your ship, I think it's actually really good. And how I described thinking it would have been more like No Man's Sky, well, the actual controlling of the ship in space is exactly like that. And I'm comparing it to No Man's Sky so much because they did great on that game. And I thought that game was awesome. And honestly, Starfield did great in a lot of aspects too, including this one. Then when it comes to the ship combat, well, that feels pretty smooth and nice too. though it can get tricky sometimes, I've learned. But you can still fly around, enjoy your ship, which is a heck of a lot of fun and a lot more than other games like Outer Worlds or the recent Star Wars games give you. And on the topic of your ship, I really like all of the customization, not only to your ship, but in general really. I like that you can buy new ships with different interiors, I would assume. You can sell ships, there are ship dealerships, like it goes so in depth. Then you get different spacesuits and helmets to go with the spacesuits, all having their own stats and tiers. Then you can have an outfit under the spacesuit. And it is even funny because I had an interaction where someone commented on the fact that I was wearing a spacesuit in a place that had oxygen. And on the other side of customization, I think that the character creator was all in all really nice and polished. I like the way that the sliders worked, being able to fine-tune things and choose presets, but at the same time, it not being way too complicated to understand like some other games have it. Plus, the character models and all of the NPCs are all really well done. I have not found a person that I think looks bad, and I kind of just enjoy all of the models. If you've seen my past video on the state of games, I mentioned how people in Starfield looked smooth and clay-like from what I saw in the trailer. But honestly, playing it now, it looks a whole heck of a lot better. And I find myself just staring at characters sometimes like, wow, in the design. Like, it is not over the top realistic like some games like Cyberpunk can get it, but just the design is pleasant, and I think they did a really good job on the characters. I keep saying that, they did a good job, you're probably gonna hear me say that a lot. But off the topic of customization, I wanna circle back to a couple things in the cons. First, starting with the dialogue. I do hate the camera during conversations, but I love that we've returned to the dialogue boxes and more fleshed out speech options. I'm happy I won't have to download any mods to fix that part of the dialogue, though I don't know about that camera. So another double back, I mentioned how some of the planets were not that exciting, but I do feel like the choices of the planets, like I said, some of the planets you get to visit, be it the ones in our solar system and outside, and honestly, there's some pretty nice environments on some of those planets, whether it's forest or crazy red haziness on Mars, and on that side of planets, I think that they did really cool, and it was cool to see some of the planets they have in certain solar systems. And speaking of planets and cities, New Atlantis might be cool and all, but I absolutely loved some of the other cities like Aquila and Neon. And you might not know these places yet, but I feel like most people will love them when they finally see them. And in these places, I love that they did not skip the extra step of gravity. I could have totally expected Bethesda to use some excuse of like, weights in your spacesuit counteracting the gravity, but no. You get to enjoy all of the different gravity changes and all of those different worlds. And let me just say again, for everything on pretty low settings, the game looks amazing, and these worlds, whether they're barren and desolate, they still look great, and I think that they did a great job in making an absolutely beautiful game. On the topic of beautiful, I love all of the amazing freaking loot. Like, Bethesda did live up to that expectation that all Bethesda games follow, and that is endless loot. And in Starfield, there's even more, and it's even better. Find hundreds of different foods, some even belonging to brands that you can find across the universe, and I just love that. Brings so much more immersion into the game, finding a half-bitten sandwich, or a Reuben sandwich, or maybe finding a Chunks apple. And then on top of all of that, every piece of loot and food is so detailed. It is a joy to look at before picking it up, and even worth looking through your inventory at all of the things that you've piled up. And while on the topic of inventory, I honestly love all of the UI and different screens, fonts, like it all fits such a clean, space, NASA type aesthetic. And I really enjoy seeing things like the computers and recordings, because it's like, whoa, that looks really nice. Though I do not like all of the workbench screens, to be honest, as those do resemble past games as well. Though, this is the pros. Still talking about Bethesda games, Starfield brings in a couple new things with the dialogue that I think were awesome additions to the formula. One being very similar to things we've seen in the past, one being completely new, and something else I really liked. So that first thing is the persuasion system. So persuading is no longer an automatic thing done based on the level of your charisma. Instead, it's almost like the bartering system from Oblivion. You go into a persuasion sequence where you have to choose certain options of dialogue with certain amount of attempts. So if you're able to persuade them in the amount of attempts you have, then, well, you persuade them obviously, and if not, failure. The other thing, which I absolutely loved when I saw it, was the speak for me options in dialogue when you have a companion. What this is sometimes when having a conversation with someone, a dialogue option pops up where you actually get to decide to let your companion answer for you, getting to see the basis of what they have to say. I don't know why I liked it so much, but it does feel better when companions are not constantly butting into conversations when they are not wanted, though it does still happen sometimes. But off of all this peaceful garbage, how did I like the combat, you might be asking? Well, I'll just say now, I really liked it, and there are honestly a lot of reasons. I will start with the weapons. I've only seen a few from what it feels like, but every gun I found feels like it's packing a punch. I think they sound great, I think most of them look pretty cool, and all in all the gunplay is super smooth in general. I remember hearing that ID had helped with the gunplay and even melee combat, and honestly, whoever did it did an absolutely great job. Again, saying that. And honestly, this list is drying up, and I'm down to my last couple, which are kind of loose, and I could not really connect or associate it with anything. But I enjoyed lockpicking, or digipicking, or whatever it's called, but it did take a while for me to understand. At first, I wasted a good amount of digipicks and let out some quick anger trying to learn. But once I figured it out, it was really refreshing to see something new and different than the bobby pin and lock that pretty much every game has adapted, even outside of Bethesda. But as I said, it is hard to understand at first. I felt like I was going crazy trying to figure this out. But when I did finally figure it out, I was like, what? And I felt like a genius. But on to the last thing that I really enjoyed, and of course, it is the building. I didn't even know that there was going to be base building in this game, but once I was told to go set up an outpost, I got giddy. Speaking of outposts, I want to interrupt this real quick. I guess there's one more thing that I did really like, and that was the trait of starting out with a house. Only catch is you're behind on your mortgage and need to pay off 125,000 credits to get it back from the bank. I bet you can guess the first thing that I'm saving up for. Back to the outpost though. You get 8 outposts to start, which might be able to increase with skills, but honestly, I do not know that yet. Though, when you set up an outpost, it's like claiming a workshop in Fallout 4. You get an area that you are allowed to build in, and certain things you get to build depending on your resources, and you get to build a literal space station. Even getting to go all out with decorations, just like you'd expect in a Bethesda game. Yet they even add a new aspect into the building with a top-down view to make it easier to build the actual structures. The only complaint I would have with the building is the lack of fine-tuning when rotating an object. It is borderline impossible to get it perfect, though if that's the only thing I found, that's okay, and the building I really liked. And honestly, I can't wait to make some crazy outposts on some crazy cool planets, along with getting my cozy, little, expensive cottage. And honestly, that's all I really noticed on the pro side of things. I mean, yeah, there were things I noticed that were done well, but even with the day and age of gaming we are living in today, I will not give a game praise for functioning properly, even if the system requirements at the moment are whack, and even if it didn't function fully properly at first. But yeah, that is what I thought about Starfield. I like some stuff, I dislike some stuff, and honestly, I think that's okay. I would say that the pros definitely outweigh the cons, and I don't dislike Starfield by any means. I actually enjoyed myself quite a bit once I got into the groove of things. I really expected this game, with how big the release was though, to be pretty one-sided in my eyes. I felt like I was either going to be able to say, wow, this game is the best, and I was absolutely wrong, or I would say that the game was garbage and I was right in not being hyped at all. But honestly, I never expected Option C. This is a solid good game to me. I enjoyed playing it, though there is enough with it that I don't think this could be my new obsession game. On how the game is though in comparison to others, imagine Fallout 4 and Outer Worlds. mixed with No Man's Sky and Star Citizen. It is a very ambitious game, and I still have a lot to explore and see, sure, but as of now, I can say that the game is good, and that's about it. It's a complex concept dumbed down by the limitations of older games, but they made something pretty awesome with what they had. I didn't experience any crazy bugs, sure some objects glitching here and there, but no crashes, no faceless people yet, and honestly that's another good thing to see. So I'll leave you with one final thing. I vividly remember the release of Fallout 4 and getting to play it for the first time, along with Skyrim, and I loved both, playing hours and hours on release. But looking back on the more recent release, Fallout 4, I will honestly say that as of now, I enjoy playing Starfield more than I did Fallout 4 at launch. Not saying Fallout 4 now, with its updates, mods, and who's to say what Starfield eventually turns into with mods as well, so it's a good game. I have my gripes with it, but I will definitely keep playing it to see where everything leads, so definitely expect another video in the future. And I definitely like Starfield more than I did Fallout 4 the first few times I played it. And honestly, I feel like that's the best place to leave it. I need to play more to get my final decision on the game, especially the story, as a bad story or ending could ruin a game for me, and a good, great ending to a story could make a bad game a little better. So I will relay back to you all on what I think if my thoughts ever change. And as always, if you have anything you want to add that you think was a pro or a con, throw that in the comments now. If you have anything else to add, drop that there. And if you enjoyed this video and want to see more, definitely go check out my channel now and all of my other videos there. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay up to date on everything new coming out too. And get ready for a couple of other big releases this month. And if you're looking to support more videos like this, then feel free to check out a membership to either my channel or my Patreon now for behind the scenes, monthly video schedules, early music access, your name at the end of every video, and more depending on the membership. That sounds risky, but no risky. But if you want to check that out, links are on screen, in the description, and in my channel links now. Or you can just hit that join button now to join the channel membership. But don't feel pressured. If you are here watching the vids, dropping likes, comments, and even subscribing, bless your heart, that is plenty. And last but not least, if you heard any music that you enjoyed and want to go check out some more, go to billythewhip.com or just Billy the Whip on any music platform now for something brand new. And as always, let the stars guide you, and have an amazing day.
Billy the boogeyman coming for you. Look out for the pigs, look out for me too. Been chewing them up, spitting the new, spitting the bones, pushing the noose, squeezing the game. Been making that juice, no need for the pulp. I'm spitting that too, rip it through. Anyone dripping through hoops, it's emergency, man. Sending the troops. I'm on the offensive, so don't get defensive. I know that you'll love me, so